Welcome to Conversations with Toy, a blogcast tackling life one episode at a time. This is the time to air out life's craziest moments. This space is all about speaking about life's hang-ups and ways in which we can leave better than when we started. Topics are all about ways we can find space to be better in life, love, mental space, and health.
Happy Friday to you. I always start this out by saying that just because it's Friday. And even though Labor Day was just this past Monday and it was a short week, we all know how short weeks go. They go super fast, which could be very good if you're like, hey, I'm just trying to get through the week. But you could be on different sides of the Friday trek. But we have arrived. We are here. It is now Friday. So happy Friday to you. I want to start this podcast by, first of all, honoring every life that was lost for September 11th. As much as I greeted you with a happy Friday, I'm not aware of how solemn today is going to be, or how solemn your today was. Keep in mind, everybody has their thoughts about September 11th and the Twin Towers and the devastation that it touched, in my opinion, every American. If you were here during that time, there's no way you don't have a sense of pain or anguish or just a kind of mixed emotions. And I know everyone is going to tell their story, so I might as well go right into telling mine. You know, we're not talking about, like our great-grandparents or our great-grandparents who lived through different things. When you live through something, you've experienced something, you've been alive during whatever such a time. You remember exactly where you were, how you felt, what was happening. And so that's how I feel about September 11. And September 11, when it happened, I was on Penn State campus, hanging out, having one of those AKA adult sleepovers with my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband. And I remember leaving his dorm, walking over to mine to just grab a couple of books. I'd already gotten dressed. And I remember that our dorm wasn't super far, but it was a little walk. And I remember seeing students running. I mean, you could always see somebody on campus running on any given day, but I remember just seeing a plethora of students running. It was it just felt eerie. You could tell something wasn't right. So as I get to my dorm at the time, I want to say I was a sophomore, maybe even a junior. No, I think I was a sophomore. And I remember going back to my dorm, which I had my own room. And I remember just everything was just in the hallway, was just so eerie. And so as I went to the community spot, it's called the Hub. If you were Penn State, we are Penn State. If you went to Penn State, the Hub, Robeson Center. It was where everybody hung out. Didn't matter who you were, didn't matter. Everybody hung out. There was, places you can eat, you can hang out, you can do homework. I remember seeing people just crying and screaming and hugging and congregated by the TV. So as I got to the TV, they were, obviously re-showing the devastating pictures of the Twin Towers going down. And my heart sunk. And I remember one of my friends came and she grabbed me and she's crying and she's telling me how she hadn't been able to get in contact with her mom, and her mom worked close by and she wasn't able to get in contact with her. And so, this immediate panic and fear. So after I comforted her and she decided to go see some of her other friends, I decided to leave, go to my boyfriend's dorm, of whom he was either just starting to see the story or maybe he hadn't heard it at that point, but just letting him know this is crazy. So we went to class together. I had skipped my political science class at that particular day because there was no way I could go. and sit in that particular class. But there was another class that we went to where it was like, a big community of us. Like we really felt connected, even though, it just was what it was. And so we went and we were listening to stories. I remember very vividly students saying how they couldn't get a hold of their parents and they had still not gotten a hold of their parents. And by that point, I think it was like mid-afternoon. And it was just one of the most scariest times. And so we all remember who were here, remember what we were doing, what this, the atmosphere was like. I remember going back to my boyfriend's dorm that night to try to go sleep. And I remember like not being able to sleep, not being able to rest, nothing. My husband still sleeps with the TV on nightly. It's 5 seconds part of the reason why I have like a sound machine, the weighted blanket, and just other things. But I'm also like semi-restless. Like I can fall asleep at the drop of a dime, but staying asleep and getting quality sleep is two different things. But I remember having that TV on. And if you sleep with a TV on in your room, which I highly recommend you don't, I would say that depending on what you watch, it can either affect your sleeping pattern by either introducing things into your dream life or to your REM sleep. And so I remember like not being able to sleep because I just kept feeling like scared. I kept feeling jolted because I kept saying, this could happen to anybody. This can happen anywhere. We're a couple of hours away from our parents. What if something happens? Just immediate scare and fear. I thought about all the international students who I knew in a certain degree people would be looking at them sideways. Like, this is your fault. This is from your country or whatever the case may be. So there was a lot of moving factors on September 11th. And no matter how long it's been, it's really just feels like that same solemn feeling. So I know, like for instance, I post on, my social media about remembering and always remembering, but it's more than that. It's more than just posting a picture that says we remember. It's about thinking about every person that tried to save another person and lost their life trying to save someone else. And it didn't matter what color people were at that time. People were coming together to pull bodies out of the rubbish to try to save as many lives as they could. And it was one of the most darkest times. It was one of the most times, that I can remember in my history of being alive. Just remember seeing people trying to attempt to come together. Now, things have changed since then. And, we got a lot more things crazy going on. But it doesn't take away from the fact that so many American lives were lost over terrorism. And it was just such a dark time. I remember it just didn't, and it, even after the first year anniversary of September 11th came, it was still just like it happened the day before. It was so fresh, still so new. And even weirdly, it still feels the same. Like I can remember what I had on as I'm sitting in, in class, we were discussing it and comforting each other and trying to get through it. It's not a memory that I could ever forget. Like I plan to, eventually be able to tell my kids, like, this is what happened. This is what I was doing. And so as we continue to press on from today, as we move forward and we're thinking about how things are going to go for us, and we're thinking about, the people that are mourning and we all mourn together and we have this solemn moment, it's just another reminder that we just never know when our time's going to be. And I know that sounds so grim because it's like Friday, but we can't ever just skip over something so monumental as the September 11th attack. We can't. So we have to talk about it just for a few seconds, a few moments, just to give that time to just say, this is reality. This is what happened. And so if you're feeling like your emotions are all over the place, trust me, I understand. I say do whatever is necessary for your self-care, but remember, make sure that when you do whatever it is that you need to do for your self-care, make sure that it's things that promote healthy mind, body, and soul. Like, I'm not telling you to go drink your life away because you feel like that's going to numb your pain, because it only numbs your pain temporarily. But find those things that you can do that helps clear and cleanse your mind and your thought process so that you can, figure out how you're going to maneuver and move, because this is a lot. No lie. I know everybody's like, why do you always talk about mental health care? Because I like to think that we all have some type of mental health issue that we may be dealing with. It may not be as large as someone else, right? It may not be as someone who may be dealing with schizophrenia. It may not be with someone. And again, I don't consider there to be levels. I do believe there's degrees, but I feel like if you deal with mental illness on one scale, you can understand somebody else's who's going through something else. That's called empathy. And we should walk into that a lot more, because we don't walk in that enough. We don't walk in someone else's shoes and consider their thoughts and consider what they may be going through. Even if you yourself have never felt it, even if you have never gone through something, you should still put yourself and ask yourself, how would you feel if you were in that same position? Would you be able to be honorable in how you handle it? So do whatever you have to do today for self-care. I plan to kind of relax a little bit. I have a surprise for my son and my niece. Their birthdays are tomorrow. And let me just tell you I was talking to my mom and my sister about that tonight. Like, just the story surrounding, the September 11th and my son and having him when I was pregnant with him. He'll be 9. But I was thinking about how when I was pregnant with him and his due date, I was looking through paperwork, like trying to figure like what was his original due date. His original due date was September 24th. And I remember that because it's my parents' wedding anniversary when they renewed their vows, I should say. They got married in June. So it was in the renewal of their vows. So it was around the same time. And I remember thinking, like, I don't want this boy to be born on September 11th. And I know that sounds super selfish, and please forgive me if that's offending anybody, but the reality is I just didn't want the date to be associated with such a drudgery day, because I felt like, how would I feel like celebrating his life knowing that other people have passed away? And I know there's been people that have died every single day of the year, right? It just is what it is. But I just didn't want, this was such a monumental time. I didn't want to have his birth associated with that. And I didn't want his birth to be associated not necessarily with that as a negative connotation, but necessarily like, just that grieving process. And I wanted to have like positivity to be surrounded by his birth. And so I went into labor on September 11th. I got to the hospital about maybe 7 or 8 o'clock at night, after I had already been going through labor from probably like 8 o'clock in the morning. So by the time I got there, I'd probably been in labor for 12 hours. And when I got there, they were like, your contractions are very close. I'd already had a C-section the first time. I was trying to VBAC, which is basically a vaginal birth after a C-section. So that's VBAC. And I was going to be eligible to do so, except for then my son's heart rate started to fluctuate. And so then they had to prep me for surgery. And in that prepping, it caused me to bypass September 11th to get to September the 12th, which was his birthday. And I was just so grateful that I was able to get past that moment, because again, he was already 2 weeks early, quote unquote. And so I just wanted his birthday to just be on an uplift. And I wanted to have some type of redemptiveness from his birth, since his birth became so close to that, because originally it was going to be close to my parents' anniversary. So I knew that the 2 days would be tied, around that time. But I was just grateful because I knew how I felt September 11th, and I knew how I would feel every year September 11th. And I just was like, I just didn't want to have to try to push through my own feelings of that. And that's why I say my heart goes out to people who have actually lost their lives during that, because can't even imagine them waking up every September 11th and never being able to forget it. I mean, we can't forget it, and as an outsider looking in, but still an American can't forget it. I can't even imagine somebody intimately going through that. So yeah, my son's birthday is this weekend, and my niece's birthday is this weekend. They both share the same birthday. They both had close calls of being almost born on September 11th. And so I'm grateful. Weirdly enough, I have a twin, and that's her daughter, and just having our kids 4 years apart on the same day is still very special. So we're going to celebrate them pretty big this weekend. And when I say pretty big, within coronavirus times, COVID times, extremely social distance, no birthday party or anything like that, no gatherings from us. So, but we found a way to find a little activity where we can kind of have a little bit of fun and honor them as they turn, their numbers. And I'm so grateful for that. As you all know, this is going to be the season finale of season 1. And the reason why I decided to take a 2-week break was, one, I believe in breaks, and I'm trying to walk in the spirit of breaks, because breaks are good and breaks are necessary. The other part of it is that seasonal depression to me is extremely and very real. I have suffered in the past behind it. Last year was probably the first year in a long time where I've kind of gotten it together, but I know that it still exists. And with the virus, we don't know how this virus is going to continue to move and shape the way that we, engage with one another. I wanted to make sure that I was there to support. So on October the 2nd is when we'll come back with the first episode of season 2. And I've gotten a couple of questions about season 2 and what my expectations are. My expectations for season 2 is going to be for continued growth. My expectations for season 2 is, now that you've gotten used to who I am and starting to learn me and hearing my voice, I want to bring in a couple of guests, not every episode, but just a few guests here and there to talk about all kinds of things and just about every area of life. I do know that my husband has agreed to be on season 2 for however many episodes I'm going to get him to be on. And we're going to talk about like a he said, she said. That's always been like a vision of me, to have him go back and forth. Just, my interpretation of a situation is completely different from his interpretation. And that's just normal between a husband and a wife. And just to talk about like some of our earlier years to hopefully help another couple who may be struggling with marriage or even just really relationships, because reality is that we've grown up with each other. I've known him for over 20 years and there's been a lot of ins and God knows a lot of outs. So we're just going to talk about that. So I do expect to have him on for season 2 and a couple other guests. I want to talk to some doctors and just some things just to be a support system, because again, I was talking to my children's pediatrician and, with the flu season just pretty much around the corner, the symptoms of the cold, the flu, and now COVID will all mirror each other. So we're all going to be thinking that half of us got COVID when it may be a cold or it may be the flu. And it's going to be the potential to be the one of the worst flu season, quote unquote, that we've ever had. So I can only admonish you, if if this is what you normally get, if you're not, please consider getting a flu shot to protect you and your family. I've already taken my children to get their flu shot, and I just wanted to make sure that we're all protected as possible. My kids, they already get pretty sick in the fall, so I always want to make sure that I protect them as much as I possibly can. And that's what we're doing. That's what I've been doing this week. This week we started back to virtual learning. My children's school is in full every day. Show up to school. We see you, you see me. Put your mask on, cover your mouth, don't sneeze on stuff, touch your own pencil, get your own paper. They're in school every single day. My husband and I have elected to have our children be home virtually and tap into the school, which means that they will log in and they can see their class and they can see their teacher teach. So it's not like when it happened when the shutdown happened in March, where my husband and I had to become the teachers. We kind of have to be like the overseers. I consider us like assistants. We're not the teachers this semester. We're like assistants to the teacher. These last couple of days have been extremely interesting. We have practiced logging in so that we wouldn't have any issues. And then there were still a couple of technical things, but nothing major. We've had a couple, maybe one or two little falling outs and little meltdowns. And so it's been what it's going to be. And so we're just doing our best to support our children. A lot of parents are making, again, I can't stress enough, are making completely difficult decisions, because having your kids at home gives, one set of parents a peace of mind saying, my kids are home, they're safe. But the other part is they may not be connected. They may not feel like they're connected to their school because they're not in school. And so, we've been dealing with that. And again, if you've been listening to Conversations with Toy, I'm going to make sure they talk to their therapists and make sure they talk to whomever they need to get that emotional release, because I want to teach my children how to navigate, especially the mental health system. Not because I'm speaking something on their life, is because we all deal with some level of anxiety and we all deal with some level of depression. And it would be pretty asinine for me to think that as an adult, I'm the only one going through it and my kids are not capable of going through that, because that's a lie. Kids pick up on things. They have their own sets of emotions. And, me going to school and dealing with the things that I was going through the school, I never went through the school during a pandemic. Right. And in Philadelphia, or we like to call it Philadelphia, I'm not going to school where kids are, being killed. And, there's been an increased uptake level of children that have been unfortunately killed. during these last couple of months, I would say since January. I think we're right underneath Chicago, and you know how deadly Chicago can be. So again, the thought process behind we thinking that kids don't go through things is just mind-boggling, because kids go through things in themselves. They have their own feelings of feeling inadequate about whatever it is that they have to do. And so I've already been really cognitive, always listening to that and being clear, helping them to make sure that they have whatever they need as an arsenal, as a tool to help them. And if I can help them navigate it now as kids, I feel like by the time they become adults, even if they go through something, they'll at least know what they can do. They know who to reach out to. They'll know how to make appointments. It won't feel like it's shameful. It won't feel like it's them being weak. They won't feel like that because they're already used to walking in that. And so that's the goal. It's not to speak anything into their lives. It's not to make them feel like, these kids can't take nothing. Whether you feel like kids can't take anything or not, the best thing you can still do is support them. And that's the job that I hope that my husband, I really don't put as much emphasis as making sure that they become doctors and lawyers and all that stuff. I want them to be good citizens, and I want them to have good mental health. Because if they have good mental health and become good citizens, they can navigate anything that's inside of them and make this world better. Because they can be more in tune and more aware of the people around them and themselves. So that's my little TED Talk on children, the coronavirus, virtual learning versus being in school. Parents got to do what's best for them. I'm doing what I feel is best for me and praying that my decision will not come back to bite me and that they will be better off for it. And I don't judge another parent for sending their children to school at all, because again, we make the decisions according to what we know, and you got to do with what's best for you. Can we talk about gaslighting this week as we end this season 1? Gaslighting, no matter how you slice it, is really just ability, usually of another person. You can't really gaslight. If you gaslighting something, you can't gaslight things, but you can gaslight between relationships. Now, that doesn't always mean romantic, but it does come up a lot in romantic relationships. But any relationship can be gaslighting. Your parents can gaslight you. Children can gaslight parents. Friendship relationships, romantic, platonic, like there's so many aspects of gaslighting. But basically, gaslighting in a nutshell is you feel like something is going on, something is wrong. You're feeling something, like your intuition is picking up on something, but the other person is making you feel as if you're making it up. It's inside of your head. It never existed. It did not happen the way that you felt or hear it. And so then you're like left with this thought process of, what am I going to do? This situation is, becoming more and more intense. And I just don't understand why this is being said. The person who does the gaslighting usually does it in a way to humiliate you, to make you feel like, maybe you didn't think that, maybe that was in your head. And so you really will lose confidence in yourself, self-esteem issues, all kinds of gamuts with gaslighting. This came up today, and I did a post about it because we're talking about, Trump. Unfortunately, it was revealed that he stated that he did know that the coronavirus was going to be as bad as it was, or is, I should say. And it takes a special type of person. Now, again, I don't really talk about politics, not because I don't believe in it. I'm actually a political science major. I really could go all day back and forth with anybody about different parts of the political process. But this is not about politics. This is just about people. If somebody knows something and they just refuse to withhold that type of information, you can sit there and call it a lie. You can call it telling a story. Back in the day, I wasn't allowed to say somebody was a liar. I had to say you was telling a story. Well, whatever level you like to put up with that, or whatever level you like to call that, at the end of the day, there has to be a special form of gaslighting to have facts that support that something's not going to be okay. For you to believe that there's all kinds of stuff happening, but you say, no, it's not really happening. And this whole concept of downplaying or uplifting or whatever you want to call it, to avoid panic, you can still inform. I think that's just, to me, is a form of gaslighting from the top down. You can experience, again, gaslighting in all kinds of relationships where you'll be feeling as if something is just completely off and not together. And then you figure out later on that one, you were either right, or two, that person has you so far in their grips of gaslighting that you don't even realize how bad it is until way after the fact. I think with gaslighting, I think it becomes, one, we're so trusting of the person that we're dealing with that we don't consider that the person that we're dealing with would do something to hurt us. So we ignore every sign, every single sign of it, because of the fact that we're putting so much emphasis on the relationship instead of listening to what people are saying and hearing and seeing how their actions line up with what they're saying. We don't pay enough attention to their actions at all. I mean, you can legit say a lot of different things and not have any true intent behind it. So just be careful if you find yourself in a situation where you feel like you're being gaslit. And I say lit because it's gaslighting. But yeah, be careful of that, because one of the things I try to avoid is that when I hear people say that someone is their everything, this concept of someone being your everything leads to, in my opinion, situations where people either can take advantage of you or you leave yourself wide open to just all kinds of craziness. I want somebody that's going to complete, not even complete me. I want somebody that is going to come and make my life that much better. And I do the same for them. I want someone that's going to come and challenge me to be a better person. And with challenging you to be a better person, it also is going to bring out of you the things that are not. But I don't want someone that's going to openly use that information to come against me, to basically have me underneath their grip. So when I hear people say that a person is their everything, be careful who you give this person is my everything title to, because there should be still a little part of you that remains. I know that when everybody's like, well, I want to get, not everybody, but a lot of people want to be married and have this concept of being one. I honestly believe that you can be one and unified in agreement with someone and walk in that type of unification and walk in love and walk in agreement and be on the same page. But you also can still have your identity, meaning you still have certain talents that are inside of you that may not be fully connected to your spouse. Your spouse may not be the person that is supposed to be, he can be in your life, he or she can be in your life, but it doesn't mean that they are the person that sparks that inward joy that you have when you complete something. If you're a chef and your husband and your wife can't cook, it's okay to love them and still walk in agreement with them, but still love being a chef. That may make you your biggest joy. It may then turn into other things that come from that one talent, could build up into all kinds of other things. But you can still have that one talent or that one thing that you truly love and enjoy. And it doesn't always have to be connected to the person that you're with. Like with everything that we do, balance is always going to be key. That's why when people do yo-yo dieting and just different diet programs, if you don't learn to focus on the balance of what it is that you're doing, this is why people fail and fall off. Balance will keep you grounded, and balance in relationships will keep you grounded as well. Because when you become grounded in a relationship, you will pick up sooner when someone is gaslighting. And when you become grounded and more balanced in relationships, you'll be also able to find yourself in a situation where you can identify red flags. Like a lot of times we don't even pay attention to red flags because once we're so caught up in a relationship, we don't even pay attention to certain things anymore. So it's important to be sure who you align with, because that trust that you give to another person can be extremely a blessing. And then that trust that you give to another person can be extremely debilitating. It takes a lot to break down a person where they're unable to see themselves. And you know how many times people say, I've lost myself in the relationship. It's true. I mean, I've done it. I've lost myself getting caught up, given to that person because it becomes so new and so flagrant and you're just so involved with it. It's so mesmerizing. You're like, this person just does everything. It just makes me feel so warm and fuzzy and all that other stuff. But some of that needs to be reserved on, you doing those things for yourself too. Do you make yourself feel happy? Do you make yourself feel content? How do you feel when you look in the mirror? Like, these are things that we should focus on so that we don't get fully caught up in another person. With me being married, I love my husband to the nth degree. There's nothing that he can't get from me. If I have it, he couldn't stop me from loving him. outside of him doing stuff that he ain't got no business doing. But, like everything about him, I love. And even the things that irritate me about him, I still love him. But I'm not so caught up in him that I can't ignore, like I would hope to not ignore abusive relationship or make excuses for his, bad behavior. So that's really what gaslighting is. And so I just want us to be aware, because gaslighting is so prevalent that we don't even consider the simplest of things could be a form of gaslighting. Just as simple of things. So that's always been very important to me, to pay attention to the things that people say and the spirit in which they say it, because those things truly, truly, truly matter. I wanted to talk about your trash. We deem trash, trash is just things that we are considered waste, things that we have excessive of, we need to get rid of, things that no longer serve us. Trash are so many different definitions or things that can follow under the umbrella of trash. And have you ever noticed that when you're going into a new season, unless you're, especially if you're somebody like myself, when I go into a new season, I actually will go through my entire closet and see those things that don't fit anymore, see those things that I feel like I no longer desire, see those things where I'm like, you know what? It's served its purpose. It needs to go on to the next person. When I was younger, and I've talked about this before with being like in the shelter and different things, you get a lot of things handed to you, given to you, bought for you, hand-me-downs, Goodwill, thrift store, whatever the case may be. And I've always thought when I was, now that I'm an adult, that when I give something to someone, I give it to them with the spirit of wanting to give them my blessings versus me just giving them stuff that I just don't no longer want. And so I've always prayed, and I've done this for like a while. Like I think when I had my daughter, it just became so prevalent to me to give from a place of a good heart. And when you give from a place of a good heart, like I'm not recording anything that I'm doing to give to somebody. I just think that's so crazy. But I say, God, please bless the people or whomever was going to come in contact with the things that I'm giving away. May it be a blessing to them. Because what we consider to be trash, it could be something that could touch someone's entire life. When I think about, you ever had those moments when you have those thought process like, oh, I really wish I could have such and such and such. Or you're thinking about, man, I really need A, B, and C. I've had times when someone has just walked up to me and given me something, or not necessarily walked up to me, but just have given me something that I needed, that only my prayer would have even brought that to me. And so it's like when you feel like you're heard, it opens and makes your whole being happy. And so I always think about, what if the bag that I'm giving away to someone was a suit to an interview that got them that job? What if the dress that I gave them was a dress that they wore to watch their best friend get married and they just had great memories with something? I think about that. Like, where will these clothes be going to fill whatever desire for someone's life or whatever it is that they have going on? And I know that when you give away clothes to something or somewhere, not everything gets to the rightful destination, that some things get burnt up, some things get destroyed. I get that. But I always say, God bless my efforts, that my heart is always open to give something to someone that makes them feel good. Because, like I said, when I was growing up and being in that shelter, you would get all kinds of stuff. And I never was in a situation where my mom allowed me to feel, first of all, ashamed, but two, you don't feel and look down on people, and you have this highness and naughty look about people where you're just like, oh, how did they get in the situation? They got in a situation because life is happening all around. And so I don't want to give stuff to people and be like, I'm giving it to people because they're struggling. Like, that's not at all my MO. That's not how I think. That is not how I process, because I lived it. So I wouldn't want someone to do to me what I just don't want to have that type of karma in my life. And so I'm always cognitive, like, what if this one, pair of jeans was like, went on a first date with someone and they met their significant other, right? We don't know where our clothes, our shoes, our belongings is going, but sometimes it's a blessing to someone. I mean, you can give away furniture and somebody is just starting off their new home. You know, maybe they were living with family all this time. They get their first new home, and something that you thought was like getting rid of and you're upgrading could be the blessing that they always needed. Or they got it for, cheaper because of something that you donated. And now they don't have to worry about that's one less expense coming from their house. That's the way I think. That's how I feel like when we say we give from a good place and we're giving because we want to give towards something, I think about that as my process when I'm packing up stuff. And I try to give that to my kids. We'll give stuff away and I'll say, well, what toy really made you feel happy? And what if we could make another child feel happy? And if my kids said, well, I don't want to give that away, I probably wouldn't even push it. But I wouldn't even explain to them about how, mommy was in the shelter. I've already talked to them about that. So they're fully aware of that. I don't feel like that is a time to use a guilt trip to get kids to do something. But I will say, I feel like I'm trying to teach them how to give towards people and give to people from a place of love and want to and desire. Because I don't feel like you should give anything to somebody that's going to make you upset that you gave it. Because why give somebody something in that same attitude and spirit? Like, why? What type of karma are you trying to reap in your life by giving something to somebody and you're mad about having to give it? You don't get no honor from doing that. You're not honored because you did it, just because you gave it and you gave it away with a mean spirit. Like, don't nobody need that type of energy in their life. So I'm just extremely always humble about how I carry myself, how I think about the things and people around me, because, since coronavirus has taken place, we haven't had like a full-fledged way of connecting. Some of us are feeling completely disconnected from people because we can't socialize, we can't hug people, we can't interact with people, we can't give high fives, we can't, give the bruh man dab, we can't do nothing, because anything that we do and we're not spaced apart, 6 feet apart, we could potentially affect another person. So that's a lot of pressure. But with just a disconnect, it's that type of disconnect with people is really not helping people's minds, people's emotions. People are really truly going through. And not only that, are they going through mentally and emotionally, but like financially, people are losing their jobs, losing their homes. I watched a story about I think it was in Texas, where people were being evicted. This is the type of world that we live in, and it's really bad on both sides, because I can sympathize with people who have lost their jobs, and I can also sympathize with folks who have mortgages and things that they have to pay, but they're renting out stuff. Like, it's so unfortunate. And so this sense of disconnect is real. It's real. It's happening. People are feeling it. People are down. People are out. They're all over the place. So just keep that in mind when you're blessed and certain things that have no real relevancy makes you feel like you're upset about something. And it's like, hey, but somebody over there, their basic needs are not taken care of. So just stay humble. Stay humble, because you could be one Tootsie Roll away from being in the faith line or being homeless. I'm telling you that right now. And so I honor God all the time. I honor, just responsibility and just having the ability to have the means and the ways to be able to take care of our family. I'm super grateful. I know you guys should know by now that I have a blog. This podcast is an extension of that blog. That's why if you pay attention to like the notes of the podcast, it's really a blogcast. I started blogging. This November will be 6 years. And in these 6 years, I had to go through the trenches of learning the ups and downs and the ins and outs of blogging. This was before I was even able to look at and see what a contract even looked like. This was before I started getting products sent to me. This was before I started doing reviews. This was before any of that. This was just me having this wild idea to go ahead and start this blog, and felt like I had something to say. And at the time I was like, I want to help people to get past their failures. And I still do. Like, I feel like, and the funny thing, we call things our failures are really just lessons. But the lessons that I learned have been hard hitting. Like, when I fall hard. Like, I can't fall slow. Like, I just have to do it. I got to go all the way in. So that's how the blog got started. And in the 6 years, I have grown tremendously, and I'm grateful. I have connected with some amazing people who are bloggers themselves or influencers who have really helped me, who are really inspiring. But I also feel like, you know what? I don't compare myself to whomever else is doing something, because my light is just as dope. Like, I'm just as dope as the next person. I don't have to have 22K. I mean, would I love to have those types of numbers? Yeah. But even with all of those things, slow and steady wins the race. So I don't compare myself. This podcast is an extension of that blog, of which you can, read at www.toytime, which is TOITIME.org. Now, a couple of years ago when I first started, it was a .com. And I would say, I won't even say literally, I hate saying literally, but since COVID in March, I changed it from a .com to a .org. Now, I was already going to change it from a .com to a .org because I wanted to have more. First of all, I wanted to own the domain. That's number one, because ownership is the only way you can work. This is the reason why I can say yes and I can say no, because I'm not under someone else where they can call the shots for me or any of that. But I wanted to own my domain. And then the second thing was I wanted to have complete control over ads and how I placed ads, who I did ads with, and all those other aspects. So therefore, that's just the way that I went, and it's been working out. So now I went from a .com to a .org, and this podcast is just an extension of that, because we talk about all kinds of life lessons. I mean, I've shared all kinds of things that I've done and things that I've struggled with. I mean, I've had times where I've had my car repossessed, and I've had all kinds of stuff happen, because when you're not making good decisions, I'm telling you that right now, it could go left quick. And so I've learned through the embarrassment and the pain of watching myself I felt like it was like an out of body experience. Like, is that really Toy going through that? But people didn't understand, like, Toy wasn't getting her life together. And so it was like a shake up. Like, either you're going to shake up, or you're going to wake up, or you're just going to have to keep going through this until you stop, till you get it together, because you're just going to keep making bad decisions at this point. But, in your 20s, I think you're allotted that, right? I'm not telling 20 years old to go out here and just do whatever you want with no consequence, but I'm saying there's always a season. And in my season of 20s, and it's been a ride. It's been a ride. That's why I say my oldest daughter, I had her when I was 28. She came in right in the nick of time, and it kind of like woke me up, because at that point, yes, I was 28. Yes, I already had my degree. Yes, I was living in my own apartment. Yes, I had a car. I was doing what I needed to do surfacely. But at 28, she woke me up to where I had to step it up even further. And so, in a way, it sounds cliche. It sounds corny. But my daughter woke me up and pretty much saved my life, because it was through her that I was able to recognize that I needed to get counseling and go through therapy and get some things taken care of, because I didn't want to be the type of parent. I didn't want to holler at her all the time, and she was just a baby. And that's not saying that I was hollering at her. I'm just saying I just felt that in me, and I wanted to just do whatever I can. Every generation should get better, and I'm sure my mom has done exploits that have been better than what my grandmother have done or was going through, and I hope to be better than what my mom went through and had on her plate. And I hope that my daughters and my son exceed in abundantly more than whatever I'm doing, because I feel like I'm only touching the surface of trying to support my children and doing what I can to be a good quote unquote mom. And I don't feel like a good mom is a perfect mom. I think a good mom is the mom who recognizes her needs and can balance, who can fill her cup so that she can fill other people's cup. I think a good mom is the one who can recognize her faults, so that when she has those days where she done filled up everybody's cup and now she's on the edge and she's going crazy, she can, not going crazy, but yelling and just being somebody other than what she's supposed to be, that she can go back and apologize immediately and not do it out of grudge. Those are the types of things that I aspire to every single day, because I make a mistake every day. And so those are the types of things that I focus on. So season 1 has been amazing. 10 episodes, talking about the things that I've gone through, the things that I've said, the things that I've done wrong, that I hope will be an encouragement, not for you to do more wrong or try to outdo me, but to get to the point where you say, you know what, I'm going to learn from her mistakes so I can avoid the heartache and pain. Because let me tell you, I done had many nights where I cried and I was frustrated, and it's like my pride of not wanting my parents to be involved. So I'm going to take care of things myself. I mean, I've been through it all up and down, and I would hope that we could all like learn from each other, but like not forcefully allow ourselves to go through things just because. So season 1 has been that ride. It's been, hey, this is who I am, or this is a part of who I am. You know, get to know me, read my blogs, read about me, figure that out to say, okay, we get it. Now let's keep growing. Because that's what I want to do in season 2. It's all about growth. It's about talking more about our different topics, as I have all kinds of lineup. And again, I'm going to be having guests. My husband's going to be one of the guests that's going to come through. We're going to talk about our relationship like a he said, she said, because, my interpretation of things is different from his interpretation. And somewhere in the middle is the truth of how it boiled down to. But yeah, that's the growth that I want to see for season 2. These 2 weeks is going to be amazing. I plan to decorate my house for fall, because by the time we come back October 2nd, the first day of fall, I believe, is either September the 22nd or September the 23rd. So we'll be just the cusp of fall. As it gets colder, seasonal depression is real. So I want to make sure I support those who may be going through that. I'm going to try to get a good system down for the back to school virtual learning. Keeping my eye out and my ears out for this virus as it progresses. We are about to go into the voting season, as we have an election. This is an election year. It's a major election year. And it's not my job to tell you who to vote for, but it is my job to encourage you to register to vote and make sure that your voice is being heard, regardless of what your voice has to say. And so those are the types of things that will be happening in the next 2 weeks. I'm going to, and I want to go to Linvilla. So if you're in or near the Philadelphia area, Linvilla Orchards is one of those amazing, I won't say farm, but I'll say like, for me, it feels farmish. Now, granted, I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I've been in Philly for almost 10 years. And I still like the feeling of small town feeling, but being in the big city. And so anytime I can go to anything where I can do like an apple picking or corn husking or anything weirdly around that, I absolutely adore. So that's why I love going to Linvilla. I've gone just about every year since I've moved here in Philadelphia. I go by myself for a day. I go with my family, and then I go with the kids, because my husband is not a fan of all that hay and all that other stuff, but he does go at least with us at least once a year, and we have a really good time. You can eat really amazing. This is not an ad. This is free promo for them. But yeah, I love Linvilla, and so that's what I'll be doing in the next 2 weeks, trying to schedule that trip in, getting ready for the fall, getting the kids together for school. Also, usually around this time is when I start buckling down on my savings even further because of the holidays. I don't like to charge anything for, I don't want to charge any of my credit cards or anything like that for the Christmas season. I rely solely on savings. And what I mean by savings is like literally having a separate savings from our family savings, where I pull from that and do all of my shopping. And that means decorating and everything. So right now I start tightening up on my budget. I start only getting the things that I can truly justify as necessarily and show enough need. So that for me, the holidays has always been about creating memories. And for my children, there's just certain traditions that we do that are beyond the gifts that we focus on. And so that's what I want to get involved with. But also keep it in mind too, and this is the reason why season 2 becomes so much more important, is that during the holidays, especially if this virus continues to be what it's going to be, what are we going to do if families can't get together? Like if you cannot contribute, if you cannot go and be with the family that you're normally used to being with them for the holidays, how much depressive people will be, that's real, because that's really what could happen. I'm not speaking that at all, but it could happen. So I want to be mindful of that. Even though I'm making my attempts to get ready, time is not waiting for any of us. And you can see we're almost in the middle of September. And next thing you know, it'll be September's over and October's here. Because by the time we come back, it'll be October. That's only in 2 weeks. So that's not a lot of time at all to get it all together. It's not enough time to, overthink. Like there's a lot of things to be done. And when you think about when September hits and October comes, like the year is pretty much over, because you go from Halloween, if you celebrate it and believe in it, to Thanksgiving, to Christmas, and then to the New Year. And so it's really tight. It's really tight. But again, people are super depressed, super sad. There's loved ones that have gone before them that they think about the most during these big holidays. And I want to make sure that I'm here to talk about these different things, because it's not like I've not been through that. It's not like I don't go through that. It's not like I don't deal with those types of emotions every single fall and every winter. And the winter gets even worse, because when you think about how dark it gets, how cold, I can't stand being cold. I don't like cold. I have a, what is this? A weighted blanket. It's extremely hot, but for the most part, I can sleep in that for the most part, almost all year, because I love heat. I love being snuggled in it. Sometimes I just bring it on the couch. And if I'm having like a stressful day, I'll like wrap it around me. It's like giving me like a hug that I didn't have to ask anybody for. And it works wonders. But yeah, we need to make sure that we're supporting each other, because there's so many things you may need that you're unashamed to speak to with your friend. And before we end, I want to talk about this really quick. So I had a friend who, she is now, I would consider an associate, somebody that I know. But at the time I was like, this girl is my friend. We're friends to the end. But I used to think that some of her, like towards the end of the relationship, just like some of the way everything went down, I was like, oh, she's just jealous. She's not really jealous of me. You tell yourself something's happened in one way. It's not. She's not jealous of me. It basically had to do with, she just was dealing with her own stuff. Now, she might have used me as the focal point, but she wasn't jealous of me. She just was going through her own stuff. But when you're dealing with like an unhealthy mindset and you got all kinds of going on, you'll believe all kinds of hype. But this is a tough time. And I remember her going through stuff right around this time of year. And if I would have, of course, hindsight is 2020. Had I known, had I been more mature, had I not been so petty, had I not been all kinds of stuff, I probably would have been able to recognize it. However, I do feel that chapters close for a reason. I do believe things happen for a reason, and it revealed its hand anyway. It revealed that, I needed to separate myself out anyhow. And so it's been working out for the last few years. But this is nothing to play with. I'm hoping that you enjoy season 1. I mean, the purpose of season 1 was just to do a big, like, hey, this is who I am. If you don't follow me on the blog, here's a podcast. This is what we're talking about. And go through just like general, like when I say conversations with Toy, like these are things that we all talk about. I talk about this type of stuff with my girlfriends all the time. I can even talk about this stuff all the time with my parents, like, or really my husband too, because this is stuff that everybody deals with, the ups and downs of life. And sometimes we want to be so picture perfect. Like, yes, if you come to my Instagram at Toy Time Blog, yeah, you're going to see some amazing shots. Why would you not? It's a snapshot of, your best representation of whatever it is that you're going through or dealing with right then, or you want to showcase. And, some people get really caught up in feeling like, oh, my life is not like so-and-so's. Your life is not supposed to be so-and-so. Your life is supposed to be yours. But people get really caught up in this life about what they believe to be real and what they believe to be what they should be aspiring to. And I can just say, if you can make yourself your biggest inspiration, and if you can say, but I don't think I inspire anybody, I don't think I'm an inspirational person, then there's a lot of work to be done. Because as much as I know, like I said, I hang around or be around a lot of influencers, a lot of bloggers, and they're super dope, but I'm just as dope, right? I'm just as amazing. I have just the most amazing content, just like anybody else's. And so you got to get to some type of a confidence, but that's a trial and error. Confidence is built. It's built. Confidence get built because you go through ups and downs and you're like, wait a minute, now I went through that before and it felt like I was going to be under, but then I realized I came through it. That's how confidence is built. Confidence, sometimes you don't wake up as confident as you feel, like you're supposed to feel. So sometimes you have to build it. But season 1, the 10 episodes, I thought of how amazingly I enjoyed taping them or recording them. I enjoyed every bit of it. Once I figured out the editing part, I got great at it as far as I'm concerned. And I love it. I love being able to come and bring these episodes to you because, like I said, this episode is really about gaslighting, but a lot about gaslighting has to do with a personal walk with learning yourself. Like sometimes we kind of jump from different things, and that can mean relationship too. But I remember jumping to so many different things and never taking the time out to like learn myself and figure out what it is that I want, or to figure out what it is that I needed for those moments, what was going to take care of me and make me to be the best me that I could be. And so when you're talking about gaslighting, just keep in mind, gaslighting is there to reveal, sometimes to reveal like where you need to tighten up at and stop giving so much of yourself to somebody else. But also realize, even though we have these revelations, it doesn't mean that the revelation is because it's your fault. The revelation is there to help you to become better at recognizing it earlier or to separate yourself from it. But when someone gaslights you, that's because it's them. They're doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. They are treating you the way that they're not supposed to be treating you. So I super appreciate it. I appreciate it. Every download that you have done with this podcast, for listening. If you're not listening to it on Good Pods, this would be a good plug. Good Pods, I will say this is a plug for them, but Good Pods is a place where it's almost like the Instagram of podcasters. So you might listen to a podcast on Apple, but another one on Spotify. If you go to Good Pods, you can listen to all your podcasts at one place. You can follow your friends can follow you, and then you can see what everyone else is listening to and watching, or I should say listening to. And then you don't have to ask what are your friends listening to and get a recommendation. You can just, look up and get different types of different things. So I appreciate Good Pods really just taking me in. They really have been the catalyst of what started this podcast between Good Pods and Christina Barcy. Like really have been like the spearheads behind the scenes that have helped me put this together, because I had this vision. You can have a vision, but you may not know how to bring it together. But when you learn to put your stuff out there and ask a question, this podcast came to fruition simply from me asking a question and asking, hey, do you consider to be the best in the room when it comes to podcasts? I need to pick their brains. And that's exactly what happened. I picked their brains. They aligned me with someone who could help put it together. Christina brought me in. She took me in and showed me the ropes, ins and outs, the good and the bad, all the equipment that I was going to need. And it didn't cost me an arm, a leg, and my child's, my firstborn. Didn't have to give any blood and have to donate anything. It literally just was effortlessly because I aligned myself with people who I felt was going to be the best in the room, who could bring me to the answers that I needed. And sometimes just putting yourself out there and asking questions is the best way to go. And that's how Conversations with Toy was started. So I'm grateful for those who have been in my pathway that have led me to knowing how to set things up, but also told me to just trust the process and do it in your own way. I listen to podcasts all the time. I've always listened to podcasts, but I've always thought you can always do what you have to do on your own sauce. So I never wanted to duplicate anyone else. I only could be myself. And I just believe, not only now, but I always believe going forward that that's going to be always the best way to preserve what it is that I'm doing. Because if you do something that you love, it'll be like you're never working another day in life. And what I'm doing with this podcast and what I do with the blog, I really feel it. I love it. I enjoy it. So thank you for rocking out with me for season 1. Since we're not going to see each other for the next 2 weeks, whatever holidays that may come up in these next 2 weeks, I wish you a happy holiday of everything that's going to come up. Now, if you follow me on social media, you know I know every national holiday. It could be National Spinach Day. I know what day that is. And so fall is going to take place. Fall is one of my favorite seasons. Excuse me. Happy fall. Happy fall to you. Happy everything to you until we come together on October the 2nd. And when we come together on October 2nd, we're going to take it and keep moving and keep reaching and keep moving and climbing and climbing. But I'm so grateful for this. I'm grateful for this opportunity. Season 1 has been a blast. It's been everything and more that I could possibly think of. It's been everything that I've dreamed of. It's been a great vision that has been brought to light. And I will see you for season 2 on October the 2nd. Be ready. Let's have some more fun. Have an amazing weekend.
Thank you as always for joining me, and I know that even in the deepest or joyful conversations that there's something we can learn and apply. Until next time, I hope that you are doing better. If not, we will be back to talk some more and handle it. Peace to you and yours. Stay grounded.